bureaus, or it came from the banks, and that was for the regulatory reasons. Like you had to keep the model, like if you also own the data and you also own the score, like that's the top in many ways, right? So it came from like a totally third party. We got the data, all these pipelines were set up, and we built the model. So that was completely third party data. What I do see is, because at FICO I also spent many years in sales and the product management as well, just comparing where you don't own any data versus you own all of the data, you need to deliver value to your customer. Data ownership just puts you in a very strategically advantaged position. Like you focus on building things as opposed to getting stuck on negotiations on the data, which is the raw ingredients for delivering value to your consumers.
What do you do when your partners may become or may become your future competitors?
Well, that's the industry we live in, right? And there's part of it that, that's an always evolving thing. There's always adjacencies. Anybody who says they understand what's going to happen in like 5 years in the industry you're like, they're smoking something.
That's my job.
I know.
So it's on my LPs.
The reality is most of us don't, right? Most of us have a good, reason. We have direction. And a lot of the times we directionally envision the world in the right direction. We don't know how these things, shake out. And so I think part of it is just building that trust within the partnerships, but understanding that sometimes they will go bad. And when to call a partnership bad and terminate it is also an important skill set. You can't be, once you're down the road, but you see that it's no longer working, right? Some things could be salvaged, and it's things that trickle up from like sales conflicts or other things that you can take care of. And some are more deeper strategic disagreements that you can't get over, right? And then it's better to transition out and think about how do we evolve to a new set of partners. And, I'm a big fan of when there are these difficult things that are nagging at the organization, making that decision as soon as possible, right? The impetus to action and making sure, because they just constantly rot, and then people say, well, why should I be doing this? I don't agree with this decision. Decision hasn't been made, and that's what slows you down. So in a lot of things, just putting something in front of people and saying, these are our options, these are the trade-offs, this is the recommended, and kind of going forward. And sometimes you just say, this is a partnership that's no longer works. I've unfortunately been in previous startup experiences where we were, for the lack of a better word, maybe not treated fairly or treated abysmally by some of the larger companies. And sometimes you had no better options. It was still the right path to travel on. You have to get up and recover and try to find another way. Right? That's why I loved your illustration, because it is true. Right? Over time, you kind of find the new the new set of criteria, the new set of heuristics, the new set of people to get there, and you try it at it again.
So I'll just follow on to a little bit of what Irina is saying. I think for every decision that you make as a product leader, like you only have the data that you have at that time, and so you have to make decisions with the data that you have at this time. And I've actually been on the opposite side of what Irina experienced. So I know AWS, the AWS situation well, because I was at VMware at the time, and VMware is the leader in virtualization, hypervisor technology. And so at the time we thought, oh, there's just this little AWS thing that's coming up, and who cares? They're so small, they're not enterprise, nobody's going to use them. And so VMware's strategy at that time, and all this is public, but was a service provider strategy. So we are not going to build our own cloud. We are going to sell to service providers and have them build a co-branded VMware cloud. And there was a constant threat for all of these service providers that one day we could change our minds and decide we are going to go build our own cloud. And so for those partners, they had to make those decisions as smaller companies, as companies with less resources and less reach, and also wanting to get better pricing on our technology. They chose to partner with us and to be co-branded service provider partners. And after I left, guess what happened? VMware built their own cloud. But the other thing is, even though VMware was the behemoth, their cloud was not successful. And so even still, those partners made the right choice. And in the end, what happened? VMware announced that they're building cloud on Amazon Web Services. So, you see how these things play out, over time. And who knew that this is where VMware was going to end up? But those partners who came along the journey with us, they had to make those decisions at that time, and it ended up working out well for them. But how would they have known that eventually VMware would build their own cloud service?
So the opposite, your competitor was forced to become your partner. Yep. So I think we have a bit of time left. I'd love to open it up for any audience Q&A and questions we have for our panelists.
So can you talk a little bit about, and I'm not sure if it's applicable, but change management in your process with your partners? How you, maybe you can tell us some stories about how you manage change with those relationships.
Well, it's interesting. Sometimes it's change management with the partners, and sometimes it's change management internally. Right? I was part of a team that tried to jumpstart a different go-to-market where we would be embedded in partner solutions. And I was involved with managing a lot of conflict with our own direct sales team, right? Trying to figure out how do you deal with compensation. Or sales teams have one preferred partner, but there's another one that we've been able to start a partnership with. And so a lot of it is just having that feedback loop, and sometimes you have to make really hard decisions, right? Where you say, yes, our top salespeople are going to get really upset. And they may even leave. But that's important for us as a growth strategy, and that's a sacrifice we're willing to make. And so we've had to make those transitions because the partners have to see that you're making a commitment. Right? Because if if they've invested in it, they've trained their sales force, they're trying going out, and then they experience blockers, that breaks the trust. And that breaks their commitment.
I have a follow-up on that. So can you talk about how, in that case, because you're talking about key resources leaving, what did your CEO, how did you influence him in that? How did you bring him into that decision?
Well, I think the influence came when we decided to actually invest in that part of our go-to-market, right? So that was a board level decision to say we're going to invest in the team as part of that go-to-market. That's all good intellectually, right? Once you get on the ground and you actually say, well, now we have conflicts, right? And now the reps start. Over time, you evolve the compensation structures and you have the conversations. And sometimes you don't want to do too many one-offs, right? Because you don't want certain people to be special, right? Because then it sends a different bad signal to the organization. So part of it was saying, okay, how do we evolve the compensation structure, both on our side and the partner side, in order to get there? But it's not easy, right? It's not. There's a lot of kind of pain and learning along the way to get that transition, especially if you've mostly sold direct previously. And and in every company I've been, we talk about some sales leaders that are really good and partner focused, and there are others that are not, that come from different backgrounds. And I think over time, as you shift that strategy, the combination of salespeople that you hire, right, the makeup will become different over time. That's the strategy.
Any other questions or?
What happens if you inherit a difficult partnership? Where do you start? Right? Or how about if leadership tells you, I have this thought, I want to partner with X company, and you might provide additional recommendations that are more founded, but they have someone in mind, and maybe they have a partnership with them or have a good relationship with them, past experience. So how do you start on that new relationship that you're essentially told that this is the way that we want, even if there are other options on the table?
Are you thinking from like technology partnership or kind of acquisition?
I would say technology. So let's say there is always like the partnership roadmap, but if you want to build your technology roadmap and you're thinking this is where we are, and we know that our customers want this they want to get here. But in order for us to enable our customers in the future, we have to make sure that we have the technology to support them. So thinking along the lines of, we need to build the infrastructure out or the back-end technology to grow in the future.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm kind of a ruthless prioritizer and I drive top down. Right? And I'm like, do we all agree these are, let's say 2019 strategic goals? Strategic product goals align and support the company goals. Right? And then I've had to, throughout my career, educate people that have little to no technical expertise and what that means from a technology and product perspective, right? And that's the challenge, and that's the language you become the translator, right? And you have to speak in their language, and ultimately everything has a trade-off. And I go back to what is the trade-off in terms of strategic initiatives, right? That by doing this, we're not doing something else, right? That's the reality. So I go back and articulate that, and ultimately it's their decision, right? If a very important customer comes in, it's not just in a partnership, it says, I want this. If I believe that's just a point thing for that one customer, it doesn't align with our market goals, doesn't align with things, my job is to articulate the cost and the trade-offs and the distraction, right, from all the levels. And then ultimately, and I make sure that my voice is as loud as it can be, in terms of that nothing, is left unsaid. But then ultimately, they are making a more informed decision, right? And they're in a position to make that decision. That's the trade-off they make. So I would be very clear of what you're missing out on by doing that particular partnership. Right? The other way to deal with it is just say, look, this partnership, there's the end goal, but there are a bunch of steps along the way. With those types of partnerships, if you do the first step, which is kind of co-marketing and lightweight, a lot of times people are satisfied and they forget about it. Right? So tactically, a lot of times you just do the bare minimum of like creating some collateral, etc., and never invest into an ounce of engineering work or product work. So I think based on the situation, you kind of manage and say, oh, yeah, we've got some data sheets, it's great. It's architecture, and never invest. Let's see if it materializes. Let's see if customers are interested, right? And get that feedback. But if there's full-on commitment, then I just make sure people understand what they're missing on and how it relates to the company goals and objectives.
Yeah, I think the only thing, again, I have a little different perspective because most of the partnerships we have is again the data technology partnerships. And the only thing I would add is, so if I just relate it with an experience of, let's say, someone is recommending a specific data technology and someone in my team wants a different data technology, and the very first thing, it might sound very naive, but the very first thing I try to do is just take the emotions out of that whole thing. Because a lot of times, there are a lot of emotions which are driving the discussion. So if you can just up-level and just just remind yourself that you're not going to favor this because your team versus the other team. Yeah, both parties, take the emotions out, align it where we are trying to do, what is the goal. And generally, I think at least I am very fortunate to be in a company which has just this wonderful culture. It gets resolved. The important thing is just taking emotions out and keeping the whole discussion very objective, because anybody can have a good opinion.